my name is Lentobies, but you can call me Lent, and welcome to Architectural Essentials episode 4, Patterns and Repetition and Rhythm. So we're going to talk a bit about why architects use patterns and use repetition, and kind of explain what rhythm is. It's all these things like patterns, repetition, and rhythm. I'm assuming that everybody has an image of what they are already, but and in architecture it might not be the easiest thing to show, even though it's very a basic notion. But yeah, and so I'm going to give like quite a few examples, and hopefully you will pick up on kind of what I try to explain. One of the things that you should really focus on when building in Minecraft, or any building really, which is just like bigger as a single house probably, is these patterns. And a lot of architects will use patterns in windows. Windows are in particularly focus points when it comes to patterns. If we look at this building, which I've shown before in a video, I've placed some colored wool blocks on the facade. This build is perfectly symmetrical when you go through the center. Well, not perfectly, but almost. If we look just at the windows, at the colored wool blocks, these all represent patterns. The green windows are all 2 or 3 wide, but if you're standing on the ground, they look all as 2 high windows. They're all 1 wide. They have the same window seal, and they're just the same. Then we have the red windows, which are kind of like a bigger one, more of a Gothic design. These are all also the same. Then we have a small thin one, which with blue blocks, and I destroyed block here. But this pattern, where there's 2 smaller ones and 1 circular top, this pattern, where it's broken up, is extended in these small thin ones as well. So even though the pattern is broken up, another part of the same pattern is still extended in other windows. The same could be said for this top small window being one of these really small windows. So wherever you look, patterns. Architects use a lot of patterns, because if you see one thing, you've seen pretty much the rest of the building as well in the facade. This makes a building easy classifiable, easy to look at. You see one window, you've seen them all, kind of. There's little processing required. It just makes it easier to grasp the building. Then we have also yellow blocks. These are kind of like the top of these red windows again. So I guess there's also a line in this as well. It's less obvious, I would say. And then there's also another structural feature which is repeated in this building, and these are kind of towers, pillars with this dome roof, which you see also in this tower, which kind of unifies the clock tower as well with the rest of the building. So in this particular build, this is inspired by the Town Hall of Manchester. In this build, architects really used a lot of patterns. This is something like you will really see this. Anything like I would say, let's say Renaissance and later, you will really see that the patterns are repeated time after time with very little variation, but they don't look dull because this variation is there. Now, also someone asked me when they should randomize and when they should try to make a build look symmetrical. I would say, like, I have no real rule for this, but I know there's like one kind of big rule in some other fields. This is the 80-20% rule. This means that 80% should be kind of the same, and then you can do something different with 20%. But how you're going to decide which part is like 20%, how you're going to look at this 20%, because you can look at it if you're going to build a whole town with 20 buildings, then you can make 16 the same and do 4 very different. Or you can say, I'm going to make one house in the house. I have like 80% of it is kind of same-ish, and then every house features something unique, which is the 20%, which can be a balcony, this can be something extended, or a shed, or whatever. So yeah, how you're going to apply this rule is definitely really open for interpretation. And like the 80-20, you can also do 70-30, but I really would stress that you shouldn't try to randomize that much. It's really important that you use quite a few patterns really, and use quite a lot of repetition, because as I said, if you have seen one window, you've seen them all. So you just look at a part of the building and you have a clear notion, a clear idea of what the whole building is, what it represents, and this really helps, makes it easier for people to process a building. And so yeah, I would really stress, repetition is good in most of the time. If it gets too dull, then of course, always, like, everybody has some basic instinct for this stuff, I would say. So if you think, well, this is really getting too dull, and then probably you should just try to randomize it a bit more, do something different with it. But yeah, if you're not comfortable going on these sort of notions for your own opinion, 80-20% or 70 or 30, one of these two rules, somewhere in between, however you're going to apply this. Now there's also another pattern in this particular build, and there's this kind of supporting structure pattern, which is extended all along the wall except for like the entrance. This kind of unifies, even though that there's the build exists out of different elements. It is clear that it's all the same building. This is again a pattern, and this helps unify the building as well. About the rhythm of this building, the best way to talk about rhythm is of course in music. Everybody knows rhythm in music, but in architecture they use rhythm as well. The best example I could probably give is like more of a Roman temple with a lot of pillars. We have row after row after row of these pillars, and they will drag your eyes all over the facade from left to right or right to left, however you prefer it. But they give buildings a form of rhythm, and this is kind of hard to notice in architecture what rhythm is. But in for this build, I would say we kind of have these two ends. In the center we have this also kind of endish thing. I would classify this an end. Then we have kind of the body of the building, which is kind of this straight line. But then again, this pattern is also broken up, but let's leave it for this right now. So yeah, we have an end which is really different from the building, is sticking out. It's clearly like different on the wall architecture. The center is clearly different from like the body of the building as well. And then we have of course the clock tower. So we have various components. We have these ends, and we have the center with the clock tower. If you would see this as like a music piece on paper, you would say like something like a wavy curve going as such. It's like this explanation is quite derpy, but rhythm is like it's really just best explained in terms of music, I guess. As far as like one house goes, for houses it's probably quite hard, but if you're talking about builds such as town halls or churches or stuff like that, like in churches you can see the pattern in of the rhythm in these support structures on the sides. Not sure how you could call them. So yeah, and so this is kind of the rhythm. Hopefully it's not too abstract. I'm going to show some more examples of what rhythm is and what patterns and repetition, how it is used. Okay, so now we're looking at a different building. This is it's like a chateau on the top of a hill. It's like defensive position, guarding towards more of a palace thing. And there is this, even though the build is quite simple, like structure-wise, it is definitely it doesn't comply to the 80-20. It's really like 90 to 10, if not 95 to 10%. This tower is the only like unique feature that isn't mirrored somewhere else. These windows, when I place the red block on top of them, this is the only window design that is used in this build. The ends are all the same, and how I try to randomize this building is just by adding this tower, of course. But other than that, I've put some growth on, like this greenery on the walls. This is to break the facade up, to give it a bit more interestingness, a bit more flair. Structurally, it's a really dull build, but if you take it all in all with the scenery around it, I would say, okay, this brings livens up the build quite a bit. And if we look at this kind of windows, this trapped roof design, which is in the yellow wool blocks, it is mirrored in other buildings in this little area. If you now look at the green wool blocks, this the same kind of roof edge design is used here as well. So here you can see that the pattern is used over the course of several buildings, not only in one building. This, of course, if you're going to use these patterns on like this scale, then we're talking about a style rather than a pattern within a build. But this, if you're going to build a town, then you should think about how you're going to unify this town, because it's quite important that these lines, these patterns are crossed over. Now, this doesn't mean that all the buildings in the town have to be the same, because obviously some pieces will just need to catch the eye a lot more. They need to draw in your attention, need to focus them on. They need active processing, so you would definitely just try to get rid of this pattern and say something. It should still look great and awesome, of course, but if you make it a different pattern, then people will, because the pattern is broken, they can't easily comprehend it, compare it to something they've seen before. They will need to process it completely from top up, or however one processes these builds, and then they can't but focus on it and see what's going on with this build, because I can't classify it easily. So yeah, there's always this play between repetition and something different. How you're going to do this depends kind of on the case, the building that you're doing, the town, or yeah. Here we see some more patterns extended. This window design is used here, and it's used over the whole facade of the building. Then there's also the one wide design, because there was too little space on the wall to do a second one of those. But if you picture here to be a wall, then of course this design is just half of this window. So this pattern, again, it's broken up, but it's still extended to some way. So it makes just look more interesting, but it isn't really that different. Still, the build is quite unified. It's looking like one building, not like a building with something odd stick to it or something like that at all. Now there's a second kind of roof design. From the side it looks really derpy, but to make like these Renaissance style buildings, you just need some depth, and there was no really good way of doing it otherwise, I think. And therefore I just stick these slabs on top of like the facade. Any angle from the front looks quite okay. From the sides not so much. But anyway, this is again another pattern that I extend throughout the rest of the town. So I've kind of chose to do two kind of roof designs, roof edge designs, like the front things. Then this window pattern is the same as the pattern on this, except for this one has this decorative top above it. So again, this pattern is somewhat extended, somewhat not. It's really just a slight change. So if you wouldn't have looked at it for a second time, it's just it kind of blends together. It doesn't require processing that much. It isn't all eye-catching. This is more of a build which is kind of scenery. This is you definitely do not need to focus on it. And then we have, yeah, more windows. And if we move on to this building, here we can see that even if you do very little variation, it can be quite okay. The blue blocks, like I marked all these windows, but probably would have looked better without the blue blocks. These windows are all exactly the same. I will get rid of them real quick. So I got rid of the windows real quick, and definitely looks a lot better right now, I think, in my opinion, because it's more of an analog color scheme right now. Anyway, so the windows are all the same design that unifies the build. Then we have kind of these separators again, such as we saw on the town hall build, and the same decorative top is then again featured in the center. We have a similar circular feature here. Kind of in the decoration is also unified again. It's different, but it's also unified. So it looks coherent. So again, all the different color wool. So we have in red, we kind of have the same shape, which is it is featured in the window, is in this window design, and it is in this decorative design for decoration. And it's also kind of featured in the blue windows as well. Yeah, I think, yeah, it's the same. I should have colored them similarly. But yeah, this build, this features a lot of different patterns. Quite a small surface. This isn't like the best builds that I have in terms of. No, I don't think this is the best build. But it is looking one of the most interesting builds of the ones that I've shown in this video, and that is because there is less pattern. There are more unique features to this building. That's why it looks more impressive, and you're just like your eyes really move all over the facade. You're like focused on one thing right now, and then next second on something else, because you want to take all this in, you want to process it all. So there's less unity in this building, and because this is like the top build, this is some sort of like maybe the winter palace or the summer palace or whatever. This is like the summum of this town. This is the top of the top. Therefore, it's appropriate that this isn't one build that you just look at and you poof, you understand it, it's awesome. And yeah, this really, you look at it, you move around it, you keep seeing all these new things, and it keeps interesting. And because this is the focal point. This really, I wanted to go all out on this build. So there's little pattern repetition in this, even though there's to some extent there's a pattern. We have these yellow windows with the yellow wool, which are kind of prominent, one of the most prominent features. Yeah, what can I say about it? It's there's some subtle patterns, but I would say this is quite random looking. And yeah, the rhythm. Talking about the rhythm of the build, this one obviously has these ends as well. It has a definite centerpiece, and it has these in between separator things as well as like this top thing. So high, body, high, body, high. So this is kind of the rhythm that is in this build. So now we're looking at a completely different build from what I kind of used to do. This is some sort of modern office building, and of course this is, you just have a massive wall of windows. It's quite uninteresting, but I do something with colors in this build. We have with the really white pillars, and then we have the stone pillars, the grayish pillars. This helps to make it a bit more interesting, to draw your eyes over the facade. And interestingly, like the edges of these, it moves a little bit out, which kind of makes it a bit more dynamic, this build. But if you look at the white lines are always on the edge, except for oh well, here as well. But yeah, it gives some dynamic to the build. But this pattern where there's different colors makes the build it's a bit less. It's unified. It's not unified. This is a rhythm thing. We have in the center these are kind of two elements. This is the separator. Then here we have an element. Here we have an element. They go all back one. Here we have an element. Then this is broken because here we have another window pattern. But then element, 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 and a half of one. So there's some rhythm in this build. Hopefully you have a use for this tutorial. Hopefully it was somewhat clear. Hopefully you enjoyed my rambling. And so yeah, question to you. If you have a better suggestion as the 80 to 20% rule or 70 to 30 for patterns and repetition versus randomization, do let me know down below in the comments. Help the other viewers as well. Tell me about your own experience with Rhythm. I definitely, if you think there's a better way of explaining Rhythm, do tell me below in the comments. And yeah, have an awesome day.